Well, in previous videos we've had a good look at the helicopter rig for tench fishing, but today I'm going to have a look at another rig that's just as effective in certain circumstances. So please give us a subscribe and a thumbs up if you like these videos, and let's have a look at the rig I'm talking about. So the rig I'm talking about is the Inline maggot feeder, and it really is a dead simple rig. So all we've got basically is the inline feeder, short braided hook length and a nice strong hook on the end. And like I say, there's certain circumstances where I use this rig over any other, and that's really where I think there's a chance of the main line getting lifted up off the bottom at quite an acute angle. And obviously if you're fishing a helicopter rig where your rig's going to be coming off the main line sort of about there, 6 inches away from the feeder, that's going to look really unnatural if the line's held up off the bottom. With that kind of helicopter rig, you're really hoping that the line's going to be flat to the bottom, held down really by the weight of the swivel, and so it'll fish effectively and look reasonably natural. But if you're fishing in the margins and you've got a deep margin, then the chances are the line's going to get held up. Similarly, if you're fishing to the back of a bar, which is similar kind of setup to the margins really, it's going to do the same thing. And again, if you're fishing into weed or into small holes in the weed, there's a good chance that line is going to get held up, and a helicopter rig's not going to look very natural. Yeah. So compared to the helicopter rig, with the inline rig, the feeder's going to come and land on the bottom, and then the hook length will come to rest somewhere next to it. Now the reason for using a soft braided hook length is there's a good chance that the feeder could sink a little bit into the bottom. And if you were using a stiff line like monofilament or fluorocarbon, then again you could get some funny angle things going on and the hook length being held up a little bit. But with a soft braid, especially a heavy sinking one, it's going to land perfectly, come to rest right by the feeder. And again, the maggots are probably only going to crawl about as far as a dinner plate away from the feeder, so you want that short hook length to make sure that your hook bait is right in amongst that spread of maggots. Now the other benefit of the short hook length is the tench only has to suck in the bait and move a couple of inches, and it feels the weight of the feeder, it's pricked, and there you go, you've got a screaming run, job done. If the hook length's longer, and as we've seen on the underwater films before, tench can pick up and blow a bait out very quickly and hardly move in between. So the longer the hook length, generally the bigger the chance is that you're going to miss bites, not even see bites, because the fish is going to spit the bait out before it's pulled the line tight and pricked itself against the weight of the feeder. So always keep that hook length quite short. And there you go, very simple rig. Let's have a look at how to tie it. Now the inline maggot feeder rig is probably one of the easiest you can tie, to be honest, and I always use the big Drennan oval inline feeders. I don't modify them, just as they come they're pretty much perfect. And then locked into that is a semi-fixed large swivel, which I think comes with the feeders, and then onto that is a length of about 5 inches sinking braid, and it's important really that that braid sinks, and I'll show you a little tip later on how to improve the sinking of any braid. And then onto the end of that is a size 10 Drennan Super Specialist hook, and generally the hook bait would be a bunch of red maggots. Very simple, easy to tie. Now the one trick I will tell you about is how to tie the hook on. This braid's relatively thick because it's a sinking braid, and it needs to be to have the sinking fibres incorporated in it. So that can make it slightly difficult to tie on small hooks that have a small eye. So what I actually do is I go once through the eye with a braid, and then use a whipping knot, or a spade end knot as it's sometimes called, to tie the hook on, rather than a blood knot or a grinner, which would mean I'd have to try and go through the eye twice. It would be really difficult. So once through the eye, and then tie it on with a spade end knot, just as you would if it was a spade end. It's a really strong knot, it's never let me down, and it just solves that problem of using a thick braid with a hook with a small eye. Now the other trick you can do is to make sure that your braid sinks really quick, and to darken it up a little bit as well, is to get a little piece of tungsten putty. This is normally sold for carp fishing, but I find it comes in useful for lots of different things. And what I do is I just wrap that around the hook length, there we go, just so the hook length's in the middle, and then carefully put a bit of pressure on it, carefully run it down the braid. And you could do this 2 or 3 times, up and down the braid. And what I'm trying to do is just put a thin coating of that tungsten putty on the braid. Take off any oil or residue that's on the braid, dull it down a little bit as well, make it sink, and also make it stop collecting air bubbles, which can make it look really bright on the bottom. And there you go, really simple little tip, but it just improves, you know, very slightly the sinking rate and the visibility of the braid. Very, very simple. Now if you want to pin the line down behind the feeder, then this tungsten tubing is the best stuff to use that I've found. Fish don't seem to mind bumping into it, and it's very, very heavy, so it does have a good chance of lying very flat. So there we go, that's the inline maggot feeder rig. It really doesn't get much simpler than that, and in the right circumstances it's a brilliant rig. The only problem you can sometimes have with it, especially if you don't hit the clip on the cast and let it sink on a tight line, is there is the occasional chance that the hook can snag on bits of the feeder, or even maybe up on the main line if the hook length's a bit longer. And the simplest way to stop that happening is just to get a bit of dissolving rig foam and just mould that around the hook, and that will stop that hook catching on anything. It means it will go down, sink, the foam will dissolve, and then the hook length will sink down next to the feeder. Absolutely perfect. So again, not something I have to do all the time, but if I want to be 100%, I'm not expecting many bites, then I'll put a bit of rig foam around there, dissolving rig foam, just to make sure that the hook can't get caught on anything because I'm casting it out. There you go, very, very simple rig, very effective if you use it, certainly in the circumstances that I've talked about. So when you're out tench fishing, why not give it a go? So thanks for watching, and I'll see you again soon. Bye for now.